In today's English lesson, you are going to be planning the first part of your narrative, adding in the description. So think back to the identity card that you created yesterday. Think of the identity that you are going to be writing as and using in your narrative, whether that be a male, female, you all came up with different names, different residing countries, different reasons for leaving, etc. So think about that. I'm going to show you a waggle and read you a waggle of what your first couple of paragraphs will look like. But obviously, as I'm reading it, try and think about how your character and your background of that character would fit into my waggle. So, being stateless is like being an alien. Anywhere where you place me on the planet, everyone will still say, "You are not from here." Here is my story of my journey into becoming a refugee. My name is Eden. This is not my real name in order to keep my identity safe. And I fled Syria in 2001 after the country was unsafe for me to stay there any longer due to war. It became unsafe for me to continue to live here as many arrests were being made of those people who opposed the leaders' rules. If you were to be arrested, you would face the hard raft of the Syrian prisons where you would share a single cell with 38 other women, the toilet was just a hole in the ground, time would be spent pushing lice between fingernails and picking weevils out of disgusting food provided for nourishment. Many prisoners die from malnutrition, as food is not all that adequate. Prisoners aren't just dying because they're hungry, they're dying because they're angry about being hungry. I could not allow this to happen. As I placed my large rucksack on my bed in haste, I knew I had to pack up my most prized possessions. Being selective over what I chose, I walked over to the mantelpiece and took hold of the gold oval frame that contained a treasured photo of my mother. My mother, who I had not seen since I was 15. She left me with Auntie, believing I would be safer in this part of the country. The only place safe for me is to leave. Wrapping the photograph with newspaper and string, I pushed it into my bag. I looked around the room, questioning, what else do I have room to take? In the corner of the room, my running shoes called out to me. Yes, I would definitely be in need of those. Other items I decided upon included jeans, a jumper, knitted by my auntie, a range of t-shirts, socks and underwear. Soon my bag was beginning to bulge like a spot ready to burst. So as I'm reading that waggle, you look over it again and see if you can identify all the descriptive features, because in here I've used a simile where I've used like in comparison, I've used some personification where I have given an object a human quality, so obviously a lot of descriptive words in there, two-way sentences, and magpie that and use that when you come to plan. Your planning grid on purple mash looks like this. So down the left hand side, you've got to list your characters that you are going to be mentioning in the first two paragraphs. Obviously, you are writing in first person as the refugee, but in my waggle, I also mentioned my mum, who I had not seen since I was 15, and my auntie, who I was living with. You've got to make a note on the setting. So as you were writing that story, when you were packing your rucksack, where were you fleeing from? So in mine, it was Syria, and I put a bit of background information on why I left there and what would happen if I stayed there. And then also just make a note on where you're hoping to travel to. I know I haven't mentioned this in this part of the narrative, but it's just good to make a note on as you're starting to plan it. Paragraph 1 is information all about yourself. So make notes on your refugee name, age, where you're from, why you are fleeing that country, and if you were to stay in your home country, what would happen to you. Try and be as descriptive as possible and use some technical vocabulary. Paragraph 2 is the day you packed your bag, ready to leave. So again, make notes on what you packed in your rucksack. Think about sensible items of clothing. Obviously, you would only need a certain amount of clothing, especially if you've only got a small bag to put it in, as well as one treasured possession, such as a photo, or it could even potentially be a necklace that someone in your family have given you. How were you feeling when you were packing your bag, and did it bring back memories of your family when you were a whole unit, when you were all together? And then finally, in this section here is where you can just write an example of description. So I've asked you to personify to describe the rucksack. So give the rucksack a human quality. Show not tell to describe how you were feeling. So rather than saying you were feeling really sad and upset, how could you show that rather than just telling the reader that? And a two-way sentences describe your items that you were packing. So in mine, I described the photo frame as being golden and oval. So come up with some powerful words that you could use in your two-way sentence. You're going to use this plan for tomorrow's lesson where you write up these two paragraphs. So like I said, it is a plan, so it only needs to be note form. You can do bullet points, phrases, but obviously still needs to be fairly detailed, so you can use this in your writing tomorrow. So again, I look forward to seeing your plans on Purple Mash. I'll give you some feedback when you submit it back through, which will then hopefully help you with your narrative tomorrow.